We'll go way in the back there, sir. Yeah, in the last row.
Yes. As a high school student here in Des Moines, who goes to school somewhere only a couple of miles from here, I've seen the worst, and I've also seen the best of our educational system. Can you tell us a bit more about what you did in Minnesota to help improve education there, and what you would do as president to improve education across our country?
That's great. Thanks a lot. Well, if you look at Iowa and Minnesota, we compete in a lot of things, good-naturedly, of course. One of those is who has the highest ACT scores in the country. It goes back and forth, but lately we've been doing well on that front. But we have other great statistics in Minnesota. ACT scores highest in the country. Some of the highest high school graduation rates in the country. Some of the highest college attainment rates in the country. NAEP scores that are amongst the highest in the country. We took the international test scores as if we were a country by ourselves in the late 90s in math and science, and we're approaching 20th in the world. We took them more recently and moved up all the way to 5th or 6th in the world. And you might say, well, Governor, that sounds pretty good. Things are good in education in Minnesota, and overall, they are. However, that's only true if you look at the average. If you peel back the onion and look at the results for children who live in areas of concentrated disadvantage or who come from challenging situations like broken homes or neighborhoods or communities that are disadvantaged, the results aren't very good at all. In fact, they're awful, and they've been awful for 30 years. So we need bold and courageous education reform. Most of this is a state and local and parent issue, not a federal issue, but it's important that we lend voice to it so we can mobilize and raise awareness in the country. Here's a couple of ideas of what we do by way of example. Number one, we know the most important determining factor of how a child's going to do in school is their parents. So we want to do everything we can to encourage and to get people involved as parents who are resourced and engaged and helpful and on task when it comes to parenting their children and being engaged in their children's educational life. But we know that many parents struggle to do that for a variety of reasons. But we want to encourage it with our words and support it as best we can with our policies. And a lot of that doesn't have to be in government. There's a lot of wonderful community and charity and other organizations who try to help with that too. Number two, we know the second most important determining factor of how a child's going to do in school is the quality and effectiveness and preparedness of their teachers. So who goes into teaching? The minimum requirements that we have for who we let into colleges of teaching. What they learn when they're there, is it rigorous and robust and relevant? Do we have some minimum requirements before we let them out of the College of Education to actually go teach? Once they are teaching, do we track and make sure that they're producing good results? And if not, do we have the ability to develop and support them? And if they don't improve, do we have the ability to remove them quickly and efficiently? Now, that's not our current system. Our current system features paying people for seniority, making it almost impossible to discipline or remove a teacher in our public schools. That whole teacher reform movement needs to happen, and it's powerful. If you're fortunate enough to have a good teacher for your primary grade several years in a row, the likelihood of you doing pretty well is strong. If you're unlucky enough to have a teacher that's not very effective, even just for a couple of years in grade school, your results are not very good, and the likelihood of you catching up is not very strong. And then lastly, we need to do something else. We need to break open the monopoly, the 1940s industrial one-size-fits-all monopoly that is our public education system. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like things anymore in an iPad world that are top-down, command and control, government-run monopolies, envisioned in the 1950s, run by bureaucrats where you're told, look, you have one choice and it's the government choice, and if you don't like it, too bad. Now, that's one thing if you're fortunate enough to have... We'll close with this, but if you're fortunate enough to have resources and you say, look, I don't like my school, it's not serving my children very well, I'm going to opt out, that's great if you've got resources. But for a lot of families in America, they don't, and they're trapped in this awful system. And if you want to see one of the most heartbreaking, sad things that you'll ever see in your life, then you watch Waiting for Superman, and if you haven't, please do. But it's a movie about the state of American public education. And in the movie, one of the children that it follows is this young Hispanic girl. Her name's Daisy, I think. And throughout the movie, they highlight how her and her mom are working so hard under difficult circumstances to keep her focused on her school, putting in incredible amounts of time and energy. And her hope is that at the end of the year, she might get a lottery number to go to one of the charter schools to escape her school because it's so bad and so awful. and she's trying her hardest, and she's just a little girl, and she's hoping and hoping and hoping and working and doing her homework, and her mom's encourage her and working hard, and they're taking buses and public transit, and finally the day of the lottery comes. And the ball comes down the chute to see whose numbers get called, so who gets to go to the school. And her number didn't get called. By the end of that movie, when Mary and I were watching it, we were so mad, and our hair was standing up on the back of the neck, and we knew for sure that on this and many other things we needed to go fight. We shouldn't have a country where a poor little girl who's working her heart out and doing her part of the bargain has to have her future hinge on whether she can escape our own government's mindless, ridiculous monopoly school system. So I'm for school choice in all forms. If people want to stay in the government schools, that's great, it's your choice. If you want to have charter schools and have another public option, great. If you want to have open enrollment, fantastic. If you want to go to a private school and the money should follow you, that we give to you from the government, that's great. If you want to have homeschooling, fabulous. They're some of the best students in our state, and I know in Iowa too. If you want to have online learning, great. We don't live in a 1950s monopoly assembly line world anymore. We live in the iPad world where people get what they want with freedom, their choice, how they want it, where they want it, as fast as they want it, and they tell the government either catch up or get out of the way because we're moving on. That's the world we're living today. I want to thank you all for coming. I was going to